The phone vibrated against my ribs. I had been asleep about an hour. I had fallen asleep with the phone face down on my chest, the way I had been falling asleep for the 4 nights I had been in this house, which was not my house. I was 26. I was visiting my parents in the small town in central Pennsylvania, where I had grown up. I was visiting because my father was 3 weeks into a recovery from a hip replacement, and my mother had asked me, in the small, careful way she asked for things, if I could come for a week and help. I had taken the week off work. I had been there since Saturday. It was Wednesday. I was leaving Friday. My younger sister, Annalisa, was in the bedroom across the hall. She had driven up from Baltimore on Monday. She was staying through the weekend. The two of us had not been in the same house together for almost 2 years. We had been falling back into the small old rhythm of being sisters by the small daily increments of cooking dinner together and watching old movies in the living room while our parents went to bed at 9. The phone vibrated again. I rolled over. I opened my eyes. The screen was lit up. A text from Annalisa. Get out of the house right now. Don't make a sound. I stared at it. I read it twice. I thought, in the small confused way you think at midnight after an hour of sleep, that she had sent it to the wrong person. That she was texting somebody else, some friend in Baltimore, and had hit my name in her recents. I started typing the kind of response you type to your sister when she has clearly fat-fingered something. Chemic, I sent it. The reply came back in 3 seconds. Mom isn't mom anymore. She's standing right behind you with a knife. I did not for the next 2 seconds move. I did not turn my head. I did not breathe loudly. I lay on my left side, facing the wall, the way I had been sleeping. The phone screen was inches from my face. The room was dark except for the small green light of the smoke detector on the ceiling. I had not heard anybody come into the room. I had not heard footsteps on the hallway floor, which creaked in 3 specific places that I had been listening for. In the small, unconscious way you listen for the sounds of a house you grew up in. I had not heard the bedroom door open. But my sister was telling me in 2 consecutive texts that somebody was behind me, and the somebody was, by her words, our mother. The phone vibrated a 3rd time. She's wearing the green robe, but it's not her, it's her face, it's not her eyes. I've been watching her for 10 minutes through the crack in my door. She is in your room right now. Don't turn around. Text me when you read this. I typed very slowly, with my thumbs on the screen 6 inches from my mouth. How do I get out? The reply came in 2 seconds window. Now we'll meet you at the magnolia in the yard. The magnolia was the tree in the backyard. The tree my father had planted when Annalisa was born. The tree I had climbed when I was 8 and had broken my arm coming down. The tree that was, by my best memory, about 40 feet from my bedroom window. The window in my bedroom was the same window I had had since I was 12. The window opened onto the backyard. The window had a small lock at the top that flipped sideways. The window had, the last time I had used it, opened easily. I did not move my body. I moved my eyes. The room had a small mirror on the dresser opposite the bed. The mirror was angled. The mirror caught a small slice of the room behind me. In the mirror, in the small slice, I saw a green shape. The green shape was a person. The person was standing about 3 feet from the foot of the bed. The person was facing me. The person was not moving. The person was breathing slowly. I could not, in the mirrors, see the face. The mirror was angled wrong. The face was above the mirror line. The body was in the mirror. The body was wearing the green robe my mother had been wearing all week. The body was holding something in its right hand. The something hung down at the body's side. The something was long. The something had a small, flat reflection where the kitchen light from the hallway, leaking under the door, caught the metal. I closed my eyes for 1 second. I opened them. The mirror was the same. The body was the same. The body was still not moving. I have, in the 11 months since, gone over the next 90 seconds of my life more times than I can count. I have told the story to 4 different people. I have told it the same way each time. The same way is not, by any measure of how I tell it, complete. The same way is the cleaned-up version. The cleaned-up version omits the part where my brain stopped working. I will tell you the cleaned-up version. I am going to be honest with you about the fact that the cleaned-up version is the cleaned-up version. There is a part where my brain stopped working. I am not going to be able to describe that part because I do not, by any honest reading, remember it. What I remember is the part after my brain started working again. I rolled, slowly, toward the wall, away from the body in the green robe. I rolled until I was facing the window. I put my phone in the waistband of my pajama pants. I slid one leg over the side of the bed. The bed did not creak. I knew which side of the bed creaked. I had known since I was 12. The creak was on the right side, near the head. I was getting off the left side, near the foot. The left side did not creak. I put my feet on the floor. The floor was the floor. The floor was cold. I stood up. I did not look at the body in the green robe. I walked to the window. I walked the way you walk when you are barefoot on a floor you have memorized. I knew every floorboard. The third one from the dresser was the one that creaked. I stepped around it. The two by the window were silent. I stepped on those. I reached the window. I lifted the lock at the top. The lock turned sideways with a small, soft metallic sound. The sound was the loudest sound the room had made in 5 minutes. The body in the green robe did not move. I slid the window up. The window slid up smoothly. It slid up about 18 inches, and then it stuck where it always stuck. 18 inches was enough. I climbed onto the window ledge. I looked back. I did not look at the body. I looked at the mirror. The mirror still had the body in it. The body was still in the same place. The body had not, by any visible measure, turned its head to watch me leave. The body was facing the bed. The body was facing the place I had been lying. I do not know how to describe what it looked like, in the small slice of mirror, for a body to be facing an empty bed without registering that the bed was empty. The body was facing the bed. The bed was empty. The body had not yet, in any way I could see, processed the second fact. I went out the window. There was a small porch roof below the window. The porch roof was the roof of the back porch. The porch roof was about 4 feet down. I had climbed onto it twice as a teenager. I knew where to put my feet. I went down to the porch roof. I crouched on the porch roof. I slid to the edge. I dropped to the grass. The grass was wet. I landed on my bare feet. I ran. I ran to the magnolia. Annalise was already there. She was in pajamas. She had no shoes. She had her phone in her hand. She was crying. She was not making any sound while she cried. The crying was the kind of crying that does not have any sound to it. The crying was just water on her face. She grabbed me. She put one hand on the back of my head and pulled me down to her shoulder. She was shorter than me. She'd been shorter than me her whole life. She put her face against my hair. She whispered into my hair. I called Dad. I texted Dad. He is awake. He is in the downstairs room. He is on the phone with the police. The police are 5 minutes away. I said into her shoulder, Mom. She said, I know. I said, what is happening? She said, I do not know. I want to tell you what was happening. It is going to take me a minute. My mother had been, for the previous 6 weeks, on a new medication. The medication had been prescribed by a doctor she had been seeing for what we, the family, had been calling her mood thing. The mood thing had been a small ongoing low-grade depression that she had been managing, in her small careful way, since my grandmother had died 2 years earlier. The medication had been a new prescription. The doctor had told her it might take a few weeks to feel its effects. She had been taking it for 43 days. The medication had a list of possible side effects that the doctor had described, by my mother's later account, as unlikely but worth knowing about. The list had included, near the bottom, in the small careful language pharmaceutical inserts use, acute psychotic episodes in a small percentage of patients with a personal or family history of bipolar disorder. My mother had a family history of bipolar disorder. Her older brother had been diagnosed with it in his 30s. He had been hospitalized twice for it. He was, by every account, stable for the last 15 years. My mother had not told the doctor about her brother. She had not told the doctor because she had not, in the small private architecture of her own thinking, considered her brother's diagnosis as something that was relevant to her own treatment. She had been wrong about that. The doctor would, in the small careful conversation he had with my father 2 days after the night, take partial responsibility for the omission. The doctor should have asked more directly. My mother should have answered more completely. Neither of them had done the small careful work that the medication required. The medication had been prescribed anyway. Around 11:30 on the Wednesday I am telling you about, my mother had gotten out of bed. She had gotten out of bed in the small, confused state that, by the psychiatrist's later careful description, marks the beginning of an acute psychotic break in a person on her specific medication. She had gone to the kitchen. She had taken a knife from the block. The knife was the small paring knife she used to peel apples. The knife was not, by any objective measure, a knife that would do the most damage if a person were going to use it for damage. The knife was the knife closest to where she was standing. She had walked back up the stairs. She had gone, by her own later account, to my bedroom because she had believed, in the small, confused part of her brain that had taken over for the next 36 minutes, that there was a person in my bedroom who was not me. She had believed there was a stranger in my bed. She had walked into my bedroom to confront the stranger. She had stood at the foot of the bed for 10 minutes, watching the stranger sleep, trying to decide what to do. She had not, in any moment of those 10 minutes, known the stranger was her own daughter. She had not, in those 10 minutes, known her own name. She had not known her own house. She had not known what year it was. Annalisa, in her own room across the hall, had been awake. Annalise had been awake because she had not been able to sleep. She had been on her phone reading a long article about something. She had heard the small, soft sound of footsteps in the hallway at 11:30. She had assumed at first that the footsteps were mine. She had assumed I had gotten up for water. Then she had heard the small, soft sound of the kitchen drawer opening downstairs. The kitchen drawer that held the small knives. The drawer creaked. The drawer had creaked since we were children. Annalisa had gotten up. She had cracked her bedroom door an inch. She had looked into the hallway. She had seen our mother in the green robe, walking back up the stairs with the small knife in her hand. She had seen our mother go into my bedroom. She had seen our mother not come out. Annalise had spent 10 minutes watching. Through the crack in her door, the small slice of my room she could see from her bedroom. She had seen our mother standing at the foot of the bed. She had seen our mother not move. She had seen, in the small slice, that our mother was not, by any reading of her body language, doing what our mother would have been doing. She had texted me at 1 minute past midnight. She had been right about everything. The police came up to the house quietly. They did not use sirens. My father had told them, on the phone, what was happening. My father had been awake because my father had been in pain. My father had been recovering from the hip replacement and had been awake more nights than not for the previous 3 weeks. He had been in the small downstairs bedroom my mother had set up for him, so he would not have to climb the stairs while he was healing. He had been on his phone with Annalise at 12:04. He had been on his phone with the police at 12:06. He had been on his phone with the responding officer at 12:09. The officers came in the back door. My father unlocked it from the inside for them. They went up the stairs. They did not, by every measure of how they later described it, encounter resistance. My mother was, by then, sitting on the floor of my bedroom. She was no longer holding the knife. The knife was on the dresser. She had, by her own later account, set it down at some point in the small period between when I had gone out the window and when she had registered that the bed was empty. She had, by her account, become confused. She had sat down on the floor. She had been there about 2 minutes when the officers arrived. She did not, when the officers came in, fully understand who they were. She had been in the early hours of what would, over the following days, be diagnosed as a major psychotic episode. She had been hospitalized. She had been hospitalized for 9 days. The hospitalization had been hard. The hospitalization had been, by every account I have been given by my father, the worst 9 days of his life. She had come out of the episode on the 7th day. She had spent the 8th and 9th days in a small set of conversations with the psychiatrist on the hospital floor. She had been released to home on a different medication. She had been seeing a psychiatrist twice a week for the 11 months since. She is, by every measure I have been able to take of her, the woman she was before the new prescription. She does not, by her own account, remember the night. She does not remember getting out of bed. She does not remember the knife. She does not remember walking up the stairs. She does not remember standing at the foot of our bed for 10 minutes. She does not remember sitting on the floor. She does not remember the officers. She does not remember the ambulance. She does not remember the first 3 days of the hospitalization. She has, for those 36 hours, a small flat blank space where her memory should be. She has not asked me in 11 months what happened. She has not asked Annalisa. She has not asked our father. She has, in the small private way she has decided to do it, decided not to know. I do not know if her decision is the right one. I do not know if knowing would help her. I do know that she has been doing the small, careful work of her recovery for 11 months, and that the work has been working. I do know that she is the woman I have known for 26 years again, and that the woman who stood at the foot of my for 10 minutes on a Wednesday in November was not that woman. The woman who stood there was a chemical reaction in her brain that should not have been allowed to happen. I have not been able to be angry at her. I have tried. I have not been able to. The chemistry that took her over for 36 hours was not her. The body was hers, the face was hers, the hands were hers. The intention, if you can call it intention, was something the medication had put in her brain. The intention was not, by any measure I have been able to apply, her. I have been angry at the medication. I have been angry at the doctor. I have been angry at the small system of communication between patient and prescriber that allowed the prescription to be written without the small, careful question about family history that would have stopped the prescription from being written. I have done some small work with my mother and our family doctor and a small patient advocacy group to push for better screening for this specific medication. The work is small. The work is ongoing. The work has been part of how I have been processing what happened. The medication has, in the 11 months since, been the subject of 2 small published case studies, in journals I would not have known about if I had not started reading them. The 2 case studies describe other cases similar to my mother's. I do not know how many cases there have been. The case studies suggest there have been more than 2. I am not going to name the medication in this video. The medication is still on the market. The medication is, for most patients, fine. The medication is, for a small set of patients with the specific family history my mother has, not fine. The line between the 2 groups is the line the screening should be drawing. The screening, by every available study, is not drawing it well enough. I want to tell you about Annalise. Annalisa is 23. She has been the small, careful person in my life since she was 4 years old and I was 7, and she had figured out, by some small mechanism in her 4-year-old brain, that I was a person who needed taking care of. She had been taking care of me ever since. She had texted me, at midnight, in the small, careful language of a person who had decided, in a fraction of a second, that the most important thing was to not say it out loud. The texting was the right call. The phone in my hand at midnight was the only way I was going to be told without my mother hearing. Annalise had figured this out in the time it had taken her to open her phone and start typing. I have asked her, in the 11 months since, what she had been thinking when she had been watching through the crack in her door for 10 minutes before she texted me. She has told me, in the small, flat voice she has used for the few conversations we have had about that night, that she had been thinking she was wrong. She had been thinking she was misreading the situation. She had been thinking that any minute, our mother was going to put the knife down and walk out and go back to bed, and that the story Annalisa would tell our father in the morning would be the story of a small medication-related sleepwalking episode that none of us would have needed to do anything about. She had been thinking this for 9.5 of the 10 minutes. At 9.5 minutes, she had decided she had been wrong about being wrong. She had decided that whatever was happening in my bedroom was not going to resolve on its own. She had texted me. The half-minute of decision was, in the small private accounting of the night, the part of the night I think about most, Annalisa is 23 years old. She had spent 9.5 minutes telling herself she was making it up. She had been making nothing up. She had been correct from the second minute. She had spent the next 7.5 minutes overruling herself. She had eventually stopped overruling herself. The stopping was the difference between the night that happened and a different night that I do not want to think about. I have told Annalisa many times that I am grateful to her in a way that is not, by any normal measure, expressible. She has told me every time that she had only done what any sister would do. I have told her, every time, that she is wrong about that. She has not, in 11 months, agreed with me about being wrong about that. I do not think she ever will. The disagreement is the small ongoing shape of our sisterhood. I am, in my small private way, going to keep telling her until she relents. She is, in her small private way, going to keep relenting partially without ever fully relenting. We are going to do this for the rest of our lives. My father healed from the hip replacement. He is now 8 months out from the surgery. He walks well. He does not, in any obvious way, limp. He still goes to a physical therapist on Tuesday afternoons. He drives himself to the appointments. He has, in the 11 months since the night, become the small, steady center of our family in a way he had not been before. He had not been the center before because my mother had been the center. My mother is still recovering. She has been recovering well. She is, however, recovering. My father has stepped into the space recovering left. He has done it quietly. He has done it without performance. He is 68 years old. He is, in the small private accounting I have been doing of my parents, becoming a person I had not known he was capable of becoming. He cooks dinner now on Wednesdays. He had not cooked dinner in 40 years of marriage. He cooks the same thing every Wednesday, which is a roast chicken with vegetables. The chicken is fine. The chicken is, by my mother's careful and loving description, adequate. The chicken is, by every measure of who he is now, the most important meal of his week. My mother takes the small new medication that has replaced the bad medication. She has not, in 11 months on the new medication, had any episodes. She has not had any side effects. She has, by every account, returned to the small, careful version of herself that she had been before the depression. Annalisa has moved back home temporarily. She is going to be home through the summer. She has told me she is staying because she likes being here, and because the rent in Baltimore is high, and because the commute to her job is, with the small adjustment of her schedule, fine. She has told me all of these things. None of them are the actual reason. The actual reason is that she is keeping a small eye on our mother. Our mother knows. Our mother has not, in any way, said anything about it. Our mother is, in her own way, glad. The not saying is the small, careful arrangement the three of them have made. I went back to my apartment in Pittsburgh on the Sunday after the night. I did not stay in the house on the Thursday or Friday I had been planning to stay. I did not feel ready. I did not need to be ready. My father had told me, in the small, careful voice he had been using all week, that I should go home and do my work and let them handle the small, careful days that were coming. I had gone home. I had taken 3 days off from my job. I had cried a lot. I had slept badly. I had, by the following Monday, gone back to work. I have been back to the house 4 times in 11 months. Each time has been a little easier. The first time, I slept in the guest room. I did not sleep in my old room. I have, on the most recent visit, slept in my old room. The window has been kept closed since the night. I do not have any plans to use it. The window is, by every measure of what I have been doing with it, the window. The window is back to being just the window. I do not have a clean ending. I have, in 11 months, decided that I am not going to try to construct one. What happened to my mother is the kind of thing that does not, by any normal narrative measure, end. It does not have a moral. It does not have a takeaway. It has a small, careful set of changes my family has made, in the small daily measure of how we live our lives. We screen medications more carefully. We ask doctors more pointed questions. We have a small family group text that we use more than we used to, for the small ordinary check-ins that we had been letting slide before the night. Annalisa is, in the kitchen of our parents' house right now, making dinner with our mother. They are making lasagna. They have been doing it for an hour. They are arguing, in the small affectionate way they argue, about how much oregano to put in the sauce. My father is in the living room with the small dog he and my mother adopted 6 months ago. The dog is named Pip. The dog is asleep on his lap. I am not there. I am in Pittsburgh in my own apartment on my couch with my laptop on my legs. My phone is on the coffee table. The phone is face up. The phone has not, in the last 11 months, vibrated at midnight from somebody in the next room. I am not going to tell you it never will. I am going to tell you that if it does, I am going to read the text. I am going to read it again. I am going to do what it says. That is the only practice I have learned. It is the only practice I am going to teach Annalisa's daughter, when she has one, if she has one. It is the only practice my mother has. In the small ongoing way she has been recovering. Ask me to remember. Read it. Read it again. Do what it says. That is the entire thing.